Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. Our AI narration lets you delve into the wisdom of timeless books, extracting those golden nuggets of insight.
What does it really mean to be Black in America? Like, what does it mean to live in a Black body in this country? That's a question that Ta-Nehisi Coates grapples with in his book, Between the World and Me.
Yeah,
And it's such a powerful book.
it is.
It's written as a letter to his son Samori,
Right.
and he published it back in 2015.
Uh-huh.
It was a time when we were seeing so many high-profile killings of unarmed Black Americans.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this book really tries to make sense of that reality for his son.
Right.
And so today we want to kind of dive into some of the core insights from the book,
For sure.
looking at race and identity and survival,
Yeah.
and really extract what we think are the most critical takeaways.
Yeah, I think that's a great goal.
Because I think there's a lot there.
There is.
This book isn't just like a straightforward narrative. It's a blend of history and philosophy and personal experience.
Absolutely.
And it's all kind of woven together.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
So let's actually start with that letter format. I mean, why do you think he chose to write it as a letter to his son?
Well, I think writing it as a letter creates this really intimate and urgent feel.
Yeah.
It's like you're right there in the conversation with him.
It's like you're eavesdropping on a conversation
Exactly.
between a father and a son.
Yeah, and by doing that, by speaking to his son, he's connecting like the past and the present and the future of Black life in America.
Oh, for sure.
He's bringing in his own experiences, his ancestors' experiences, and then looking ahead to what his son will face.
It's like this intergenerational dialogue
Yeah.
is happening.
Yeah, and there's this really powerful emphasis on the unique burden that Black parents have in America.
Yeah.
Preparing their kids for a world where they might be seen as a threat just because of the color of their skin.
Right.
That's a really heavy thing.
It is.
And this whole approach puts Coates' work in conversation with other great Black writers and thinkers, like James Baldwin, for example.
Oh, yeah.
His book, The Fire Next Time, that was also a really powerful look at race in America.
And you see those echoes in Coates' work for sure.
Definitely.
So one of the things that really stuck with me is this idea of the Black body.
Right.
It's like so central to the whole book,
Yeah.
but it's more than just like the physical body, right?
It's way more than that.
Deeper, yeah.
Yeah, for Coates, the Black body is like the main place where oppression and resistance play out,
But like it's where it's all happening.
Yeah, he says, the question of how one should live within a Black body is the question of life.
Whoa.
It's not just some abstract philosophical idea.
Yeah.
It's about the real everyday experiences of Black people in America.
And he really connects that to history too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It goes all the way back to slavery.
Yeah, he traces this vulnerability of Black bodies from slavery all the way to the police violence that we're seeing today.
And it's so powerful the way he describes growing up in Baltimore.
Yes.
Talking about the codes of the street.
Right, these unwritten rules that you have to follow.
To survive.
Yeah, to just survive.
It's a whole different reality.
It is, and it makes you understand the way Black parents raise their kids differently.
Right.
He talks about his own father being really strict,
Yeah.
and it's easy to judge that. But then he says Black parents often are hard on their children so they do not lose their children.
Wow.
And suddenly it all makes sense.
Yeah, it's not about being mean, it's about protecting them.
Exactly.
And all of that leads us to how Coates challenges this idea of the American dream.
Right.
It's like he's turning that whole concept on its head.
Yeah, he doesn't see it as this universal ideal.
Yeah.
He sees it as a myth that's built on denial and exploitation. And he calls the people who believe in this dream dreamers.
Dreamers.
Yeah, and his argument is basically that this whole dream is covering up the real history of America.
The ugly truth.
Yeah, the truth of racial violence that this country was built on.
And it's interesting because he doesn't just say that racism is bad. He actually goes deeper.
Yeah.
And says that racism isn't just an attitude.
Right.
It's like baked into the very fabric of our society.
Exactly. He says Americans believe in the reality of race as a defined, indubitable feature of the natural world. Racism inevitably follows from this inalterable condition.
So it's like We created this concept of race,
Yeah.
and then racism just naturally flows from that.
Right.
So to really understand Coates, you have to recognize that this American dream,
Yes.
it's not necessarily attainable for everyone.
Right. It's not this universal thing.
It's a very specific narrative.
Yeah, it's a story that benefits some people.
At the expense of others.
Exactly.
Now, you can't talk about Coates without talking about his time at Howard University.
Right. The Mecca, as he calls it.
The Mecca, yeah.
It's clear that going there was a turning point for him.
It seemed like such a formative experience.
It really was.
So how did Howard shape his understanding of Black identity?
First of all, he encountered so much diversity within the Black community, people from all different backgrounds,
Yeah.
with different ideas and experiences.
And that really broadened his perspective.
It did. He talks about how his relationships with women at Howard challenged him in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
He says it led him to love in a new way.
Interesting.
So it was clearly a time of huge intellectual and personal growth.
And all throughout the book, there's this feeling of fear.
Yes.
Like it's just this constant undercurrent.
Right. It's always there lurking in the background.
So how does fear function in the narrative?
Well, in Baltimore, fear was just a part of everyday life.
Fear of violence?
Yeah, fear of violence, fear of the police.
Right.
And he talks about how that fear shaped his childhood
Yeah.
and how it influenced the way his father raised him.
And, you know, it's important to point out that fear operates differently for white Americans and Black Americans.
Absolutely. For white Americans, fear can be used to justify control.
Right.
But for Black Americans, it's this lived reality.
It's something you have to navigate all the time.
Yeah, and they often have to mask that fear.
Because it's not safe to show it.
Right.
You know, one of the most powerful parts of the book for me was the story of Prince Jones.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking,
It really is.
but it feels so central to the book.
It is. It's like the emotional core of the whole thing.
So can you talk a little bit about Prince Jones and why his story is so important?
Well, Prince Jones, he was this young Black man.
Mm-hmm.
He was middle class. He had a bright future ahead of him.
So he was doing everything right.
Yeah, he was, but he was still killed by a police officer.
And that just shatters this idea that if you're successful,
Yeah.
if you're respectable,
Mhm.
then you'll be safe.
Right. It shows that even when you do everything right,
Yeah.
you can still be a victim of this kind of violence.
And it's so powerful when Coates meets with Prince Jones's mother.
Doc Maisie Mabel Jones.
Yes, and she says those words to Samori.
You exist, you matter, you have value.
Wow.
It's so simple, but it's such a powerful message.
It's like an antidote to all of the negativity and dehumanization.
Yeah, and sometimes diving into these complex and challenging works can be difficult.
It can.
But there are resources out there to help people understand them better.
Like what?
Well, there's a YouTube channel called Mindful Moments and our podcasts.
Okay.
And they use AI to break down audiobooks.
Oh, cool.
And it could be a really useful tool for anyone who wants to engage with these kinds of books on a deeper level.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I think you'd find it interesting.
Now, going back to that letter format,
Okay.
it really highlights this idea of passing things down from one generation to the next.
It does.
It's not just about sharing stories.
Wow.
It's about giving your children the tools they need to survive.
Right. And Coates isn't sugarcoating anything.
Yeah, he's being very honest with his son
He's giving him a realistic view of the world.
and the challenges he's going to face.
Exactly.
And within all of that, he also touches on how complex family structures can be in Black communities.
Yes. He talks about the different ways that families have adapted and survived.
And it's really fascinating to follow Coates' own journey throughout the book.
Yes.
Not just his physical journey from Baltimore to Howard,
Right.
but also his intellectual journey.
Yeah, his growth as a thinker.
And his work as a journalist really played a big part in that.
He got to see different communities,
Hmm?
hear different stories.
And that gave him a much broader understanding of structural racism.
Yeah, he saw how it operated on a larger scale.
And the structure of the book is really interesting, too. It's
Yeah.
divided into 3 parts.
Right.
And each part builds on the one before it.
And his writing style is so captivating.
It is.
He's able to combine like journalistic precision
Yeah.
with this really poetic and powerful language.
And it's beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time.
Exactly.
So where do you think Coates fits into the larger conversation about race in America?
Well, he's definitely part of this long tradition of Black writers and thinkers
Like who?
like Richard Wright, James Baldwin,
Mhm.
people who have really challenged us to think about these issues.
And what makes Between the World and Me so important is that it's still so relevant today.
Yes.
Even though it was published almost a decade ago.
It speaks to the ongoing struggles that Black people are facing.
And it forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths.
It does. It challenges the myths that we might hold dear.
And it asks us to see the world with clear eyes.
Exactly.
So to sum it all up, we've explored Coates' ideas about the vulnerability of the Black body, his critique of the American dream, the importance of understanding history,
Yes.
and the persistent reality of racism in our society.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't give us easy answers,
No, he doesn't.
but he gives us the tools to think critically.
And to see the world more clearly.
So here's a question for you to think about. How do the stories we inherit shape our understanding of the present?
That's a good one.
And what uncomfortable truths might we need to face in order to create a more just future?
That's something we all need to grapple with.
If you want to keep exploring these ideas, make sure to subscribe and share this with others.
Yeah, spread the word.
And you can purchase Between the World and Me through the link in the show notes.
It's definitely worth a read.
And most importantly, keep thinking critically about the world around you.
Don't be afraid to challenge your own assumptions.
And keep learning.